Today we're going to dive into a story that's about way more than just a beautiful songbird. It's really about a small group of incredibly dedicated breeders, a puzzle that was super frustrating, and the amazing effort it took to save a species from disappearing right from under our noses. Not from the wild, but from our own aviaries. And this quote, right here, from the breeders themselves, it really gets to the heart of it all. This isn't just some hobby for them. It's about making sure something truly special doesn't get lost forever. You can just feel the passion and honestly, the urgency in those words. So that really is the big question here, isn't it? For this one particular species, what seems like a simple case of mistaken identity almost wiped out their entire bloodline in the United States. To really get how they got into that mess, we first got to get to know the birds themselves. So what is it about these birds that makes them so captivating in the first place? Let's talk about the bulbul family as a whole. They're famous for being super personable, they're beautiful, and for a lot of enthusiasts, they are just the perfect bird to keep. It's really not hard to see why people love them. They're tough birds, pretty easy to take care of, which makes them a fantastic starting point for folks just getting into softbills. Birds that eat mainly fruit and insects. And they're not shy either. They love to hang out in the open, they're always active and alert, and a lot of them have these awesome crests. And of course, there's the singing, which is a huge deal in many cultures. But here's the kicker. For all that charm, they're just vanishing from aviaries here in the States. See, imports are really hit or miss. So a species might be popular for a few years and then, poof, they're just gone from the community. And that creates a massive conservation problem right inside the world of bird keeping itself. All right, so before we get into the whole breeding puzzle, we gotta cover the basics. What exactly does it take to keep these active, super energetic birds happy and thriving? First off, these are not birds you can keep in a small cage. No way. They are incredible flyers, so they need a lot of space. We're talking large, planted aviaries where they can literally snatch insects right out of the air. Their diet is pretty simple, mostly fruits and pellets, but the real secret sauce, the thing that gets them in the mood for breeding, it's live food. That is the absolute key. Okay, and speaking of breeding, this is where things get, well, a little dramatic. Turns out, bulbuls have a bit of a split personality. Yeah, for most of the year, they're like the perfect neighbors in a mixed aviary. They get along just fine with other species, and like we said, they love being out in the open, which makes them amazing display birds. But then, breeding season hits, and everything flips. They can become, and I'm not making this up, this is the exact word the breeders used, murderous. They will aggressively go after other birds, even bigger ones, and chase them until they literally drop dead from exhaustion. It's this intense Jekyll and Hyde transformation. So even with all that drama, the actual breeding cycle is pretty straightforward. You've got courtship, nest building, then the female sits on the eggs for about 2 weeks. After they hatch, both parents pitch in to feed the chicks, and just 2 weeks later, they're ready to leave the nest. It happens incredibly fast. All right, so now we're at the real heart of the mystery. This brings us to this one specific species where all that breeding knowledge didn't matter one bit, because the breeders couldn't even do the most basic thing, tell the boys from the girls. And the stakes here were unbelievably high. See, this species, the white-head black bulbul, was imported into the US exactly once, back around the year 2000. A handful of breeders got a few birds, and that was it. No more were coming in. They were holding the entire genetic future for this species in the US right in their hands. And this was the absolute core of the problem. The importer who sold them the birds said they could be sexed just by looking at them. The amount of white on the head was supposed to tell you if it was a male or a female. But it was totally wrong. After years of failed pairings, they finally did surgical and DNA sexing, and the truth was devastating. The amount of white had zero to do with gender. It actually told you what subspecies they were. So imagine that. For years, they were trying to pair up birds based on completely bogus information. So after all those years of dead ends, how'd they finally crack it? Well, the answer didn't come from a DNA test or some fancy lab. It came from just good old-fashioned persistence and really, really careful observation. And here it is, the big reveal. And the answer was so subtle. The males are a solid deep black and just a little heavier. The females are a bit lighter, more of a charcoal gray. But the real giveaway, the tiny detail that changed everything, was on the feathers under the tail. The females have these definite white edges. That one tiny detail, that little white edging that everyone had missed for years, that was the key to the whole puzzle. And as a funny little reward for all that hard work, the breeders discovered something else that's pretty wild about these birds. Once a year, they go through this insane molt where they lose almost all their head feathers at once. They look, and I'm quoting the breeders here, horribly abused. It's this ugly ducking phase that you just don't see in many other birds. So, look, cracking that code was a massive win. But what does it all mean for the future of this bird? Well, the answer is kinda hopeful, but also really precarious. It really all boils down to this one number, 1, a single import. Every single white-head black bulbul in American aviaries today comes from that one group of birds that showed up back in 2000. It's a gene pool that is incredibly fragile. And what that means is that the entire weight of this species' future in the US falls squarely on the shoulders of a tiny group of people. The very same breeders who poured years of their lives into cracking that visual code might be the only ones left keeping these bloodlines going in the whole country. Which really leaves us with this one big final thought. This whole story started with the charm of a songbird, but it ends with a pretty deep question about stewardship. It's just an amazing reminder that sometimes the future of a species doesn't rest on some huge national park, but on the passion, the dedication, and the eagle eyes of just a handful of people who simply refuse to let a puzzle beat them.
Welcome to the monthly Worldwide Birds magazine, your gateway to the beauty, science, and wonder of bird life across the globe. Aviculture breeding species info, stunning bird photography from around the world. Expert articles on bird species, habitats, and behaviors. Birdwatching tips for all levels. Conservation news and efforts. Exclusive interviews with experts. Explore new species, breathtaking photography, and fascinating bird stories every month. Subscribe today and join the world's bird enthusiasts. Visit our website for more and get in touch with us. Most affordable advertising benefits.